I am seriously thinking of running for president.
That's right. Howard Schultz could be running for president in 2020, or as they called at Starbucks, venti venti.
Joining us now, the former chairman and CEO of Starbucks, Howard Schultz. He's out with a new memoir entitled From the Ground Up, A Journey to Reimagine the Promise of America. MSNBC contributor Mike Barnicle joins us for the conversation as well. Good to have you, Mike.
So, Howard, what's been going on with you this week?
I'm still addicted to my coffee.
I think we need a little decaf this morning, don't you think?
Oh, I always have the 2 shots, and I can't help myself.
Decaf, yes.
No, yeah. So talk about the first couple of days, getting out there, getting the message.
Well, I must be doing something right to create so much interest and backlash from the Democratic Party. I mean, some of it is a surprise, but we expected to see some of the level of vitriol, but not to the extent it's been. But I mean, let's look at the facts of what I've tried to say. On 60 Minutes, I've specifically said I am seriously considering running for president as a centrist independent. Why? Because I've reached a conclusion that regardless of the situation, whether we're talking about comprehensive tax reform, immigration, all of the issues that the current government, both parties, have been unwilling and unable to solve, that whether a Democrat wins the presidency or Donald Trump gets reelected, I hope not, nothing is going to change because our politics and our government is broken.
So let me ask you this: how did you get to the point of thinking, hey, maybe this is going to happen? You know, obviously, Mike Bloomberg's been thinking about this for a long time, has tons of money, and he always concluded, every time you looked at it, that you couldn't get to 270. It would end up in the House of Representatives, and whatever political party ran the House of Representatives would select their candidate as a president. What did you see that he didn't see?
Well, first off, I respect Mike Bloomberg, but he's not the proxy for what's going to happen in 2020. And if he would have run in 2016, he might be the president today. He probably regrets that. But what did I see? What I see is for the last 3, 4, 5 presidential elections, only 8 to 10 battleground states have pretty much controlled and predicted who is going to be president. What if the possibility of an independent person could capture the imagination of the 42% people who affiliate themselves as an independent, which is more than either party? And what if Republicans and Democrats, lifelong, are looking for a home? They're not going to vote for a left-wing Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris candidate. They don't want to re-elect Donald Trump. But what if there's a new person? And what if for the first time in 40 years, a 50-state in which I'm on every ballot really matters, and instead of 8 to 10 battleground states controlling who's going to be president, everyone's vote, all 50 states. And
so
what I've concluded,
everybody's vote. So should we should we get rid of the Electoral College? So
no, that's what. Let me finish.
Every count?
No, absolutely
every
not.
Vote counts?
No, let me finish. So what I believe is if we proceed, we will be on the ballot of every state. We've done that work, and we can get to 270 because all 50 states will matter, not 8 to 10. And so I've done the work. I've spent the last year looking at this thoroughly. Mike Bloomberg is not my proxy. A Democrat is not going to be able to, all of a sudden, if a Democrat becomes president, all of a sudden the government's going to start working. Nothing's working. So I believe, just imagine the mandate that if an independent person could get elected, if I was fortunate enough to win the presidency, the power of the people speaking in such a loud voice, that we could transform the government finally and get people.
By the way, let me just say, Mike Bloomberg is not our proxy either. That Willie and I keep asking him to let us, have some of his money.
That's a hard.
Want some of his money?
Howard, there are 2 strains of the criticism. By the way, you haven't gotten into the race yet. You said you're thinking about getting into the race. The one strain is what we heard from Mike Bloomberg, who says, Howard, I respect you, but I've been there. You can't win as an independent. The other strain of it was captured, I think, this morning. Jim Messina, who, of course, led President Obama's campaigns in 2008 and again in 2012 and is viewed as the mastermind behind that, said this, quote, of you, he can't win, and he could seriously damage our ability ability to beat Donald Trump. He should either run as a Democrat or spend his time and money doing something that won't ruin the world. That's from Jim Messina. Why not just run as a Democrat? We know you are a Democrat. You've given to Hillary Clinton. You've supported her candidacy.
I have been a Democrat, but I am.
So are you no longer a Democrat?
No, I'm not a Democrat. I don't affiliate myself with the Democratic Party, who's so far left, who basically wants the government to take over health care, which we cannot afford, the government to give free college to everybody, and the government to give everyone a job, which basically is $40 trillion on the balance sheet of $21.5 trillion. We can't afford it. What can we do? What we need is comprehensive tax reform. What we need is sensible solutions to immigration. All of these things cannot happen under the current environment. Now, I've also been criticized for being a billionaire. Let's talk about that. I'm self-made. I grew up in the projects in Brooklyn, New York. I thought that was the American dream, the aspiration of America. You're going to criticize me for being successful when in my company over the last 30 years, the only company in America that gave comprehensive health insurance, equity in the form of stock options, and free college tuition, and Elizabeth Warren wants to criticize me for being successful? No.
So let me just follow up on that, Howard, because I think the criticism is not that you want to run for president. The criticism is that if you do run in this middle lane, where votes are so precious, as we saw last time, you could steal just enough to cost Democrats the election. So why not?
Really, it's not true.
But why not make the argument you just made within the Democratic
Because
primary?
I would have to be disingenuous to run as a Democrat because I do not believe in what the Democratic Party stands for, and most importantly, the American people. Not the people in Washington and not the people in New York. The American people want a change. The American people realize the government is not working.
Right.
It's not a statistic that 40% of American people don't have $400 in a bank, or 5 million kids in America are not in school and not work. Those are not statistics. Those are people.
But not all Democrats want Medicare.
I want to help them.
You're citing Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren. Not all Democrats want Medicare for all. Why couldn't you get in the Democratic race and make the case you're making right now as a centrist Democrat?
Because I think the country needs transformation. The government needs to be disrupted. It's not working. How much evidence do you have? Give me one thing. Show me one thing in which you can say firmly the government is really working. We don't have the shutdown of the government for a month. 800,000 people not working. What's working? I mean, I spent the last 5 years really spending a lot of time with veterans, trying to understand the veteran issue, in hiring veterans, in giving money to veterans. And then I went to the VA. You know what the budget is for the VA? You have any idea?
Massive.
Take a guess. Take a guess.
I don't have the number off.
Just take a guess. Anyone?
$40 billion.
$200 billion. The VA. $200 billion. It's tragic. There's nothing working in the government. So why should we vote in a Democrat and or a Republican to just continue the broken system and embrace the status quo?
You don't think you could disrupt it the way Donald Trump disrupted the Republican Party? He's not really a Republican, but he found that as his vessel to get into the White House.
No, but no.
I'm not saying you want to behave like he does as president, but it was his way into the White House.
No, I think this is a time in America for complete reimagination, and what I'm going to try and do is go out to the American people and ignite a powerful movement. And I believe not people in New York, not people in D.C. I'm hearing from thousands of American people, thousands saying, finally, someone's voice that I can relate to that represents the fact that I no longer feel as if I'm a Republican or a Democrat.
That's what they said about Trump. Finally, someone's voice I can relate to.
Well, I'm not Donald Trump. I mean, I've run a public company for 26 years, and in doing so, gave people real value.
You just said, Howard, and I'm quoting you, I don't believe what the Democratic Party stands for. Give me 5 issues that the Democratic Party stands for today that you don't agree with.
I just gave you 3.
What are they?
Government takeover of health care, free college for everyone, a free job for everybody, and the Democrats and the Republicans under the last 20 years on both parties have been complicit in creating a $21.5 trillion debt that is a reckless, immoral abandonment of leadership. And the fact is, the Republicans and Democrats are not trusted by the American people. They're not trusted. The problem in America is that we have no leadership that's trusted. The dignity and respect in the Oval Office is gone, and Republican Democrats no longer represent the essence of the American people. All I'm trying to do is say to the American people, I'm thinking of running for president as a centrist independent. If you agree with me, I'm going to provide you with an opportunity. If they don't agree with me, then I'll probably not proceed. But I strongly believe there's an opportunity in a large people in America, the silent majority, who want a voice of somebody who is going to represent them.
You do realize that millions of people register as independent, and yet they still tilt one way or the other, despite their registration as independent. They'll still tilt left.
But they've never had a legitimate choice.
They have not? Really?
No. Who's? Ross Perot? No. No. I'm a legitimate person. And my story, don't forget my story, which I write about in a book. I'm a self-made person that came from
Mike Bloomberg is as well.
Yeah, I like Mike Bloomberg. I hope he runs for president. I think it'd be great for America. But I came from the projects. And the empathy and the compassion I have for all those people who are being left behind is real. So when people say to me, you're a billionaire, yeah, but I'm part of what I thought was the prospect of the promise of America. Work hard, create opportunity, your station in life doesn't define you. That's me.
All right, so let's move from the decision to run as an independent and the concerns that some have to your candidacy and messaging. Let's say you decide to run for president. Rapid fire, I have 3 questions, just random. What qualifies you to be president of the United States?
What qualifies me to be president of the United States is my life experience. People are going to think it's my Starbucks experience. It's what I've learned along the way. It's sharing success. It's recognizing that every business decision is not an economic one. And it's an understanding, a real understanding, that somebody has to restore the promise of America. And what qualifies me is that I will be a leader of the country, of all American people, that people will trust and admire because I will understand. I have walked in their shoes. I'm on both sides of the equation. I'm somebody who is successful. I'm somebody who came from the projects, and I understand the American people.
Who is the best Republican president in the past 50 years? Best Dem.
I have great respect for Ronald Reagan. Just came from the Ronald Reagan Library. The thing that I took away from Ronald Reagan, aside from all of the wonderful things he did, that really struck me, especially compared to the current person who is despicable in the Oval Office, Ronald Reagan never took his jacket off in the Oval Office in 8 years. Why? Because of his respect and the dignity of the office. That needs to be restored.
How much,
Democrat, FDR.
How much does an 18-ounce box of Cheerios cost?
An 18-ounce box of Cheerios? I don't
See,
eat.
now here's the deal.
I don't eat Cheerios.
Here's the deal. You ask us.
Yeah.
You know, like budgets for the VA. We're going to ask you questions about
Ask me anything you
Cheerios.
want. I don't eat Cheerios. I'm sorry.
Okay. It's $4.
Is it $4?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Really?
Yeah. It's great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, good thing I only eat
But can I ask you a question? Do the 4 of you think that there should be a government takeover of the healthcare system?
Well, so listen, okay, good. I'm glad you asked the question, so I can ask you the question back.
Yeah.
Because, and I was talking Elizabeth Boomiller earlier this morning. Everybody always makes a mistake that Kamala Harris made, which is, you go out, you talk about how you're going to save health care. If it fits on a bumper sticker, you're going to have a long, rocky ride. I mean, Barack Obama saw it with Obamacare. By the end, he was having to make backroom deals with Big Pharma, with Hospital Association. It was an ugly process, okay? But he got to where he got to. Where do we take Obamacare from here? Where do we take the Affordable Care Act from here? And how do you do it?
Okay.
Not just because you're an independent, and you're going to sprinkle magic pixie dust all over Washington, D.C. How do you get Republicans and Democrats to sit around a table and buy into a health care plan that can actually fix this country? Because while we're talking about money, one of the most outrageous things is about our health care system, we spend more money per patient than any country in the world, and we still have single moms with their kids at 11:30 at night in an emergency room using the ER as their primary health care provider.
Yeah.
It's immoral. It's a disgrace. And we're still going bankrupt spending money on health care. How do we make it more efficient?
Joe, do you know my personal health care story?
No.
Okay.
We never talked about that.
Okay, well.
How you feeling?
Okay.
You okay?
So you know that when I was 7 years old, my father came home. He was a truck driver delivering cloth diapers, fell on a sheet of ice, was fired. I write about this in the book.
Right.
I experienced as a 7-year-old boy what happened when there was no workman's compensation, no health insurance, and we were completely destitute. We had Jewish Family Services delivering food to our apartment. We were out of luck. So I experienced the shame and the fear of no health care. That is why I built the kind of company my father never got a chance for and put health care in the place for Starbucks. So I know a lot about
health care
Yeah.
a fundamental right for every American?
Yes. Every American should have the right for affordable health care. Absolutely. So what do I believe? I thought the Affordable Care Act was the right thing to do. I don't like the way it was passed in terms of no Republican support. That's regardless of that.
But you believe mend it, don't end it.
Yeah, refine it, amend it specifically because premiums have gone up. So what do we need to do? So no Republican and no Democrat are going to be able to come together and solve this problem. That is self-evident. Now, going back to what I said earlier, can you imagine, I know it's hard, but can you imagine, given the fact it's never been done before, that if an independent person like myself, a rags to riches story who came from the projects, who is successful, could possibly become president of the United States and have a mandate from the American people that is a powerful message to Congress that says, we want change.
But what kind of change? So again, what kind of change do you sit down and you've got Mitch McConnell here and you got Nancy Pelosi there and you look at him and go, listen, here's the deal.
Yeah.
We got to fix our health care system.
Here's the deal.
Mitch,
what's
your idea? Nancy, what's your idea? How do we do this? How are you going to do that?
So, and then we bring in the what I've done my entire career, people smarter than myself with skills and experience beyond Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi in the room, get pharma in the room, get private enterprise in the room, and realize we all need to have skin in the game. So corporations need to do more for their employees, like Starbucks did. And we've demonstrated you can be profitable, be successful, and provide health care.
So the health care is still business-based?
Yeah, not only, but partially. In addition to that, pharma, once and for all, we have to realize what's wrong with the political system is that pharma has as many special interests in Washington as the NRA, as the teachers union. Let's get rid of that. As an independent person, I'm saying I'm not playing by those rules anymore. I'm going to break the logjam. And pharma, you know what you're going to do? You are now going to negotiate with the government, and we're going to have complete transparency. And if you don't, we're coming after you.
Mike.
Let's stick with benefits packages, health care, pay scales, income inequality in America. What are you going to do about restoring the role of unions in this country?
Well, the issue of unions, if you look at the history of unions, unions arrived in America because there were a lot of bad actors of companies. Like my father worked for a company in which he was fired. Unions arrived on the scene because companies were not doing the right thing for their employees. Unions have an obligation and responsibility to protect their employees. But there are also very good companies in America, very good managements in America, who recognize that we have to share success, that not every business decision is an economic one. Unions have a role to play. But unions are not the answer. The answer to inequality is a comprehensive tax reform. I was outraged when President Trump gave a free ride to corporations of a 21% tax rate. That was wrong, especially wrong when we did nothing to help the people who needed it most. So we need comprehensive tax reform.
Capital gains?
Yeah. I think everything has to be looked at in a fair way to once and for all narrow the gap for inequality.
So you were opposed to the Trump tax cut?
100%. Okay. I was public about that, and I said it was going to be fool's gold and a sugar high, and now we're going to see.
Let me ask you one other quick question. I know we got to go to break, and Willie, if you have a quick.
This is rapid fire. I feel like
this is going
need more decaf.
I'm telling you.
You need to come here every day.
Okay.
I'm just curious because so much of what's driving American politics is impacted by September 15th, 2008. Of course, the collapse.
Yes.
I'm wondering, do you think? Forget playing to any sort of populist strand. Don't you think some more people who are responsible for that crash should have gone to jail?
Yes.
Don't you think it's a crime that we have kids that spend time in jail for smoking pot, and yet you've got people that have destroyed Americans' lives, have wiped out their lifelong earnings, and they never spent a day in prison.
Yes, but who's responsible for that? The people who are in power, the leaders of the government, the Republicans and the Democrats. Both.
And the people that were running the banks and the investment firms.
Agreed.
That were milking the system.
Agreed. But who was responsible for not putting those people
you're saying
in jail?
In jail, yeah, okay.
It was the leaders of the government.
So you would?
Absolutely. Because the status quo is not working. The government is not working. The leaders on both parties are specifically doing one thing. They're based on self-interest and self-preservation. One other thing. I know you're going to get to the book, which I love. One other thing. If you're a Democrat or Republican today, and you just want to go 5 inches away from the ideology of the party, you know this, you're out.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
So our democracy.
I always said it's like The Godfather. You never get credit for being with the Corleones 95% of the time.
So
you're with them 100% of the time,
Howard,
or they kill you.
So Senator Warren, as you know, put out a plan of a 2% tax on people with $50 million or more in assets. You called that plan ridiculous. We showed a poll earlier in the show that says the American public likes that idea a lot, and they hear someone like you with billions of dollars calling it ridiculous and say, of course, he wants to protect his own money. What do you say to that?
Well, if that plan was put in place, it probably could fund the government for a day or two. So that's not the answer. The answer is, let's take a step back from this. Let's not send out a tweet or a press release that makes news. Let's get serious people around the table and solve this problem once for all, which is comprehensive tax reform.
Do you think Elizabeth Warren's a serious person on taxes?
I think she's a serious person, yes. Yeah. She came to see me a few years ago and asked me for a contribution for her Senate race.
Did you give it to her?
I did not.
Okay.
Why?
Wow.
I don't believe what Elizabeth Warren stands for. I don't believe the country should be heading to socialism.
You think she's a socialist?
I think she believes in programs that will lead to a level of socialism in America. She's a smart woman. I respect her. This isn't personal. I just don't agree with her.
All right.
We need to have that conversation another time.
You need to come back.
I love that. Do I have to leave already?
We got to leave already because we've got another set. We got Noah Rothman coming on. He worked really hard to write this book.
Okay, read from the ground up.
So, but you need to try Cheerios. I love Cheerios.
Okay.
Made for tiny hands.
Okay.
They're really good.
He eats the scones at Starbucks.
He likes the scones. I understand that. We'll talk about the scones.
I'm a yogurt guy.
Yogurt.
Okay, so now we need you to come back. So please do.
I'd love to. Thanks for having me.
A lot more to talk about.
Very interesting.
Thanks, Howard.
I'm concerned, but I'm very
intrigued. The thing is, I know
Democrats
are concerned. I would just say right now, just so I can have hate on Twitter all day.
Yes, here we go. Just launch it.
If you had come here and said, I'm running as a Democrat, then every headline tomorrow would be that you have filled the space of Joe Biden and that you would be the candidate to watch out for. I think right now the question is, if Joe Biden runs, are you guys fighting over the same?
I think it'd be great for the country if Vice President Biden runs, if Mayor Bloomberg runs. I think it'd be a wonderful opportunity, a wonderful exchange, and let's see what happens.
And by the way, you're exactly right. All these people predicting that this is going to be a tragedy, that's going to be a tragedy, they're the same people that were predicting Donald Trump would never be elected president of the United States.
I know one thing.
Nobody knows nothing.
Yeah, well, I know one thing. I love America, and I want to try and fix the problems and help the people who are being left behind.
Howard Schultz, thank you very much.
By the way, boom, he landed it.
Yeah, his book, From the Ground Up, is out now. It's great to see you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
guys.
I want to do the big talk on comprehensive tax reform. That would be fascinating.
All right.
We'll be right back with much more Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.